When we talk about cars that marked history for being bold, the Mazda RX-8 always shows up as that brilliant student who had everything to change the game but ended up failing because it tried to do something too big for the world it lived in. It is the kind of car you look at and immediately feel that there is passion in the project, there is risk, there is engineer stubbornness refusing to take the easy path. The RX-8 was not born to be just another Japanese sports car, it was born with the mission of proving that the rotary engine still had a future and could compete with conventional engines even in a market becoming more restricted, more regulated and more obsessed with efficiency. But in the end this mission became exactly the reason for its downfall, because while everyone else was moving towards smaller turbocharged engines and advanced electronics, the RX-8 went in the opposite direction and bet everything on an idea that had already been questioned since the 90s. The RX-8's design already made it clear that it was different. Even talking to car fans who never drove one, almost everyone remembers the rear suicide doors the moment they see it, one of the most iconic details an affordable sports car ever had. That idea was simply genius because the RX-8 delivered the sharp look of a sports coupe while also having the practicality of a compact sedan. Letting 4 adults get in comfortably in a high-revving engine car, this gave it a very unique personality. Because it was not exactly a direct rival to the Nissan 350Z, it was not a direct successor to the RX-7, and at the same time it did not fully fit the category of 4-seat sports cars appearing at the time. The RX-8 was a car that existed alone, in a category invented by itself. And then we get to the heart of the car, the famous Renesis, a naturally aspirated Wankel that worked at extremely high RPM, had a sound completely different from anything people were used to and a smoothness that made it clear that this technology came from another planet. The Renesis was Mazda's last big attempt to prove that the rotary engine still had a place in the future. It was cleaner, more efficient and more reliable than previous rotary engines, at least on paper, because in practice the Renesis ended up showing exactly the weaknesses Mazda wanted to hide from the world. And that turned the RX-8 into a classic example of how innovation can be incredible but at the same time very costly when the market is not prepared for it. The biggest problem with the RX-8's reputation was never the high fuel consumption, because people buying a sports car are not really thinking about saving gas. What truly hurt the car was the explosive combination of low compression, hot start issues and extremely specific maintenance that most owners did not follow correctly, and when you combine that with unprepared workshops, mechanics who had never opened a Wankel and owners who used the car as if it were a normal sedan, you create the perfect storm to destroy the reputation of any model. In the case of the RX-8, the media and word of mouth did the rest, turning the Renesis into a villain when in reality it was simply an advanced engine for an audience not ready to take care of it. And the most curious part is that despite all the problems, the RX-8 was an absolutely amazing car to drive. The chassis was balanced in a way that almost no other sports car in its price range could deliver. The car felt lighter than it really was, the weight distribution was almost perfect and the sensation behind the wheel made anyone smile, especially when the revs passed 7,000 and the engine began to sing in that unique tone, that moment when the driver realizes they are driving a car that does not follow normal rules, a car that exists to deliver feeling instead of pleasing efficiency charts. That is the true charm of the RX-8, because even with its flaws it delivers an experience no other sports car of its era offered. What killed the RX-8 was not only the Renesis but the entire world changing at the same time. While it insisted on the rotary engine, the industry was entering the era of smaller turbos, stricter emissions and efficiency as an absolute priority. The rotary simply could not keep up with this evolution without sacrificing its essence, and Mazda knew it, so the RX-8 started to die slowly. First with versions removed from some markets, then emissions restrictions it could not meet, and finally the end of production in 2012. It was the closing of an important chapter in automotive history, because that car represented the last flame of an engineering philosophy that few have the courage to follow. The RX-8 today lives in a curious state. It is loved by those who understand it, ignored by those afraid of maintenance and disliked by those who only heard bad things. At the same time it became extremely cheap on the used market, and this creates even more cases of unprepared owners repeating the same problems. But those who take care of it, who understand the car, who follow the proper procedures for fueling, warming up and shutting down, discover one of the most fun and unique sports cars Japan ever produced. The RX8 is living proof that bold technology needs an equally committed audience, otherwise it becomes a legend for the wrong reasons. In the end, the Mazda RX-8 did not fail because it was bad, it failed because it was too different for a market already scared of taking risks. It tried to save the rotary engine at a time when the world was already thinking about efficiency, hybrids and electrification. The RX-8 is the kind of car that only existed because Mazda refused to abandon one of the most incredible technologies the automotive world has ever seen, even knowing it could be costly, and for that reason, even with its flaws. It deserves respect, deserves to be remembered, and deserves to be recognized as one of the boldest sports cars of the century, and maybe, just maybe, if the market had been a little more patient, the Renaissance could have been the rebirth of the Wankel instead of its farewell. And if you enjoy this kind of content about the history, technology and curiosities of the automotive world, follow the channel Hidden Speed so you do not miss the next videos. Here, the passion for cars goes far beyond the steering wheel.